Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. It's my pleasure to welcome you to Art and Dialogue, Portraits of the Brain. I am Stacy Brennan, the Curator of Education for the Lehigh University Art Galleries. We're grateful to you for making time this evening, and we're really excited for this presentation with Dr. Jennifer Swann, Deirdre Murphy, Sarrah, Hussain, and Viola, which will begin in just a few minutes. If you are not familiar with Lehigh University Art Galleries, we are a museum on campus that has nearly 17,000 works of art in our collection from diverse time periods and cultures. We have 7 gallery spaces on campus, 52 outdoor sculptures, and you can view our exhibitions and a little over 2,200 works of art from our collection on our website. We hope that you will explore the resources there at www.luag.org. And will also come to visit us in person when it is safe to do so. While unfortunately we are closed to the general public at this time, or at least for the next 2 weeks, due to necessary precautions against the spread of COVID, there are lots of opportunities to explore exhibitions, including the Portraits of the Brain exhibition, which we'll go through this evening online. The presentation today is offered in conjunction with our current exhibition, Well, 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 Picturing Wellness from the LUAG collection, which could not be more timely given the state of the world and the need for finding ways to de-stress and practice self-care and mindfulness. The art galleries are dedicated to serving the community as a space to learn about diverse perspectives. In addition, we are currently fortunate to have incredible experts and resources on campus, including the presenters who are here today. A few logistics I wanted to go over before we begin. Just a reminder that this will be recorded. We ask that you keep your audio muted during the presentation, and at about 7:45, we will open the discussion to questions, which I will help moderate from the chat box. So please type your questions in the chat box throughout the presentation, and as well as any thoughts or feedbacks for the presenters. So it is my great honor to introduce Dr. Jennifer Swam, who is a brilliant scientist, neurobiologist, professor, mentor, evaluator, and an invaluable community advocate and resource. Dr. Swann has served many leadership roles within the university and greater communities, such as student services and research, equity and inclusion, as well as serving on the advisory board for the Bethlehem Partnership for a Healthy Community. She received her doctorate in reproductive neuroendocrinology from Northwestern University and studied at University of Michigan, where she was tenured at Rutgers, Newark, before coming to Lehigh as an associate professor of biology in 1996. Jennifer is the recipient of grants from the National Science Foundation, National Institute of Health, and her teaching interests include neuroanatomy, hormonal regulation of behavior, and anatomy and physiology. That is just a small overview of all the incredible projects and organizations and research that Dr. Swam has been instrumental in. So I encourage you to explore her work online, and obviously you'll learn more this evening. I'm thankful for the opportunity to work with her as well as the other presenters this evening, and I look forward to the presentation and the culmination of this amazing publication and project with Deirdre, Sarrah, and Viola. And we thank the Humanities Lab for their support. So without further note or comment, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Swam. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So it is a great pleasure to be here. It is really, really fun to mute it. I do want to thank the Humanities Lab, which gave the money to make this project possible. It was very exciting and very enlightening for me to be a part of a project and really learn firsthand what artists can do for themselves and for science and for the world. It was really very, very exciting and enlightening. The way I got started on this project was relatively innocently in talking to Amanda Green, who introduced me to Deirdre Murphy and suggested that we might work together to help me with a project I had started a couple of years ago. So by way of introduction, I had a class, and it's very serendipitous. Most of what I do turns out to be serendipitous in origin. I had a class that I was teaching that failed to make enough students to allow me to teach the course the way I wanted to teach it, which was to have the students pick topics in behavior and look at the neuroanatomy of those behaviors and try to learn what they did. So rather than go that route, because we had so few students, I had, I think, 3 at the time, I decided what we would do was instead explore writing a textbook. And my interest in writing a textbook came from my work as the Director of Student Success in the College of Arts and Sciences. As I saw how much money students were paying for books and how lack of money was keeping them from enjoying the education they were really entitled to, I became more and more involved in open access resources. And so I thought maybe if we as a group could write a textbook chapter, it would kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I would learn what it took to put in the work to make an open access resource, and the students would learn with me how to write a textbook chapter. So that was my goal. So I started out with a textbook chapter on, let me see if I can share my screen here. Oh, I forgot in this one, I cannot. I forgot about this. I started out with a textbook chapter on circadian rhythms. And I just realized that this particular computer, I'm so sorry, this computer does not do well with sharing sharing screens. I forgot about that until now. I started out with a textbook chapter on circadian rhythms, and then I asked the students if they could help me illustrate that chapter. And we had done some illustrations which were very poor compared to the ways in which the students were able to illustrate them. And then we moved on to the other 2 chapters that we had. But in the process of even doing the chapters, the students created enough illustration that now I think I am compelled to do a 4th chapter just on the introduction to neuroscience. And so it was learning about the art, but having them also reflect the science back to me in their art was the most amazing process ever. And it was really exciting to work with the students that I did work with for as long as we did. I'm really sorry that I cannot share my screen. I know this computer has a problem with screen sharing, and I didn't think about it.
Can I pull it up for you, Jennifer?
Can you pull up? Let me see if I can send you the link. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Let me put this in the chat and see if Stacy can pull it up. Let's see if Stacy can pull up this one. While Stacy's getting that one, let me give her one more.
You have to give me access, but I should be able to pull it up.
Okay, let me see if I can. Should be able to get into it now. And then this was the other page. What I wanted to show you was the difference between the way we were making the figures, or the figures that we had available, and the way the students were actually able to make those figures, which is night and day. Oh, thank you, Stacy. You got that? You got that up. So that what Stacy is showing you is the original textbook chapter that we started with circadian rhythms. And keep going, Stacy, because I want you to go down till you get to a figure. So scroll down, keep scrolling. This was the chapter, and the students wrote this chapter. In writing this chapter, we borrowed from the chapter was originally written by Kimball. It's called Biology Pages. All of the information in Kimball's Biology Pages is available through open access resources for anyone to use, to borrow, to modify in any way. So we took the circadian rhythms chapter, scroll down, keep scrolling, keep scrolling, keep scrolling. And we got to this figure. Stop right there. This was one of the figures. This is a very important figure in circadian systems, because this particular figure illustrates the way molecular biology works to cause circadian rhythms in the cells of all mammals, of all organisms, really. The molecules change, but the way in which it works seems to stay the same. And then if you can open the other link, Stacy, I don't know if you can open that. You should have permission to do it. Scroll down, let's see if we can find it. Because keep going, there it is, right there. Click right on that. Nope. No. It was the, can you go back? Sorry, I'm sorry, this is so wonky.
No, that's fine. Further up?
No, come down. The image you had when you first landed on that page was the one I wanted you to show. So come down, go down, 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 keep going. Right there, wait.
Up, too fast.
It's number 32.
32, got it.
There you go. This is the image that the students, so if you can make that, yeah, this is the image that we came up with. So you can see, how an artist can make this much more interesting with color and design, but also if you are good at graphics or you understand the way things work, the movement in this figure makes you not only want to watch it, but it makes you want to figure out what exactly is going on. And it's very clear that something is being created that affects something else, that then affects something else, which then leads to something else, which then causes something else. And this is the power of having artists work with you on an idea. This same information is in the previous figure, but that figure makes you not want to look at it at all. And this one has the opposite. That's what I've learned in this process.
Yeah.
So I encourage anyone listening to this and anyone you know that is a scientist to really reach out to artists and ask them to help you with your projects. Scientific papers now require scientific abstracts, graphic abstracts at the beginning. Don't try to do your own. Find an artist there among you. Get one of them to help you with them, because they will be much more interesting and much clearer if you get an artist to work with you. I'm speaking from experience, than if you try to do it yourself. It is definitely worth the time and the effort. So with that, I will introduce my wonderful, wonderful co-conspirator in this project, which was Deirdre Murphy. I had so much fun working with her, and she is such an exceptional artist. And then today I read her resume and was completely blown away by that. She was born in New York City, but she was raised in France and England and Australia and Japan. She got a BFA from Kansas City Art Institute in Kansas City, Missouri, and her MFA from the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. She's been 20 years teaching art and collaborating with scientists in Pennsylvania, and she's represented in the Gross McLeaf Gallery in Philadelphia, in the Boxhart Gallery in Pittsburgh, and the Zinc Contemporary in Seattle. She has several public commissions. She has numerous accolades and awards. She has conducted several residencies, both here and abroad. She's done solo exhibitions in Pittsburgh, in Bangor, in Philadelphia. She's got something in the Philadelphia Airport, and she has group exhibitions also in Philadelphia, in PA, in Delaware. Her list of accomplishments just goes on and on and on. She is a remarkable individual. She has been a joy to work with. I have learned more from her than I can tell you. And meeting all the artists that she knows has been a real joy. So without further ado, I will let Deirdre speak.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Jennifer, and Stacy as well. So, and it's wonderful to see so many new friends and old friends. I see one of our artists, Rebecca Cayman, here, and some of my colleagues at Lehigh. So thank you for being here. So I wanted to just give you a little bit of an overview. I'll screen share so you can see how I came to the project by way of Amanda Green and the Humanities Lab. I've joined Lehigh University. This is now my second year. I was so thrilled to have been recruited to join the art, architecture, and design team, the faculty, and I teach drawing, painting, and printmaking, and I couldn't be more thrilled to be part of the Lehigh community. And when word got out that my work revolves around art and science, that's how then the Humanities Lab was able to partner myself and Jennifer Swann together. So I'll show you let's see, I'm going to show you my website really quickly. So I have, as Jennifer said, for the last 15, 20 years, collaborated with scientists, primarily ornithologists. Let me just pull up primarily my interest lies in bird migration and murmurations, looking at patterns in nature, how climate change is affecting bird migration, and looking at conservation of different species, all the while looking at our history. So my interest really was very much bird-based for quite a number of years. And I worked with ornithologists at Hawk Mountain, very close to Lehigh in Kempton, PA. I worked with the Carnegie Museum of Natural History. And so I partnered with scientists learning about how birds see, learning about how they migrate, and all the while doing data visualization using the scientists' graphs and the way that scientists really, they are keen observers of the natural world, just like artists. And so I was using the scientists' data to try and understand, these questions that I had about the birds and climate change. And then this past year, well, 2019, I did my first residency in a molecular biology lab. And that's where I was looking at diseases such as dengue, Ebola, HIV, cancer. And now this lab, of course, is studying COVID-19 and trying to help create the vaccine for our pandemic at hand. And so at this lab, I was able to look in the microscope. And when I looked in the microscope at these deadly viruses, I saw these beautiful patterns. And these patterns to me of cells or viruses that were transfecting, that had these protein markers that made them like, fluorescent light up like a Christmas tree, I saw the Milky Way, or I saw light pollution maps. And so that was my foray into molecular biology. And this work is now on view at Box Art Gallery in Pittsburgh. And some of those were on view in LUAG for the faculty exhibit. And so molecular biology became of great interest to me. And so then when Dr. Swann asked me to collaborate, I said, well, let's do this. And so I worked with two of our wonderful artists who will be introduced to you guys really soon. This is you'll see Sarrah Hussain, who is a wonderful student of mine, both neuroscience and fine arts major. And so you'll see some of her work. And she'll be introducing herself in a moment, but this is one of her beautiful drawings. And Viola Yu, who is doing her post-baccalaureate second degree. She has her degree in environmental science from Cornell University, and now is gracing us with her presence here at Lehigh. And so I was able to work with both of these students, both last year in our advanced studio program, where they were both working on medical illustrations. And so I said, well, this is perfect. Let me ask these two brilliant students if they'd like to join Jennifer and I in this adventure in illustrating the neuroscience, neuroanatomy of the brain. Then during this summer, every Friday, I would meet with the students, and I would critique their work, and we would talk about the attributes of design and fine arts and all of the components of image making, and to see if these really abstract, very sophisticated ideas that Dr. Swann was presenting to them, if these really came across in their images, which you will see they did with great success. So one of the other things that I thought to do is, because I'm a professional artist and based in Philadelphia, I said, let me reach out to some of my colleagues and see that also deal with art and science, specifically neuroscience in their work, and that are art educators, and to see if they would like to join as visiting artists. So Carolyn Lathan Stifle is one of our visiting artists, and she will actually be doing a installation in the Fairchild Martindale Library in the atrium, hopefully coming up now in 2021. With COVID, that threw a wrench in the works in renting a cherry picker and putting in this big sculptural installation. But so Carolyn Lathan Stifle was able to, we were able to share her work and her installation-based work. And then we have Rebecca Cayman, who is with us this evening, which is terrific. And I absolutely recommend all of you to look at her work. She's got wonderful lectures and TED Talks online, and she is an amazingly accomplished artist and art educator, retired now, but was an art educator for a professor of sculpture for 40 years plus, and is just an incredible artist, and has worked with the NIH and the Ramoni Cajal Institute, and her resume is stunning. And she was able to visit our project on a Friday and give an artist presentation about her work in neuroscience. And then she critiqued the students' work. And then she again met with the students at a later date to touch base with them again. And just with this amazing grace and just generosity, shared her knowledge of art and science with Viola and with Sarrah. Shelley Thorstenson is a printmaker in the Philadelphia area, also has taught for well over 30 years, retired from the Moore College of Art and Design, and now she runs her own printmaking studio. And she again was able to work with the students to share her work in neuroscience and DNA, and how she manifests her interest in art and science through her printmaking practice. And so these artists are part of the brain visualization exhibition, which we have called Portraits of the Brain, Visualizing Behavior. So because of COVID, we were not able to have a physical exhibition. And so Sarrah and Viola and Tori Hemsath, our fabulous graphic designer that's helped to make this all come about, we have a virtual exhibition. And so that is what this website is doing. It is enabling us to share the work of Sarrah and Viola. You see a page for myself. And then we have Shelley, we have Rebecca, and we have Carolyn. And then of course we have our sponsors, the Humanities Lab, the Art, Architecture, and Design Department, and LUAG. So this website is what Sarrah will be now using to help navigate you through this exhibition and tell you more about the project. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the wonderful and talented Sarrah Hussain.
Thank you so much, Deirdre, for the introduction. It's just been beyond a pleasure and an honor to have gotten to know you these past 2 years now, and just to be your student and your mentee. You're just the best role model. So I guess I'll introduce myself a bit first so you can get to know me. My name is Sarrah Hussain, and I am a current senior at Lehigh University. Oops, sorry. Is it working? Can everyone see that? Okay. So yeah, I am a current senior at Lehigh University. A bit about my school background. So I'm currently studying or pursuing a double major in behavioral neuroscience and art. And some other extracurriculars that I'm involved in. I do research at Iacocca, and I am studying neuromuscular degeneration in fruit flies in the Babcock lab. So basically a lot of what I do is kind of doing microsurgery and dissections on fruit flies under the microscope, extracting their thoracic muscles and imaging the neurons. So I've always been very passionate about STEM from the get-go. So I'm very involved in neuroscience research at Lehigh, and also a lot of art in my free time. And so a lot of some hobbies that I like to do, especially during COVID quarantine, is hiking, cooking, reading, and I also like to belly dance. I was on the Lehigh belly dance team, so fun fact. And my career interests, for the longest time, I was a, very headstrong pre-med student, never had a doubt about it. But, as I volunteered more, got more acclimated to, the job description of being, patient care and working in a hospital, I was like, I don't think this is the job for me. As I got more in touch with my artistic side and became more familiar with the field of medical illustration, I realized that there was this huge, amazing opportunity for me that was just perfect, like a perfect niche, where I could combine my art and science and my research passions. So that's what I hope to do and what I was able to achieve through this summer project and job. So if you guys can all see the website right now, okay. So I can kind of give you a brief overview of the website. Again, thank you to Tori for helping us design the website and just polishing it and making it the best it can be. So we're very grateful. So if you want to start, you can kind of head over here to the textbook illustrations, and everything is broken down by the chapters that we learned about this summer. So if you click, for example, the introduction to neuroscience, this is some of the artwork, for example, that I made. And if you click on it, it will give you a clearer view. For some reason in the gallery view, it's a bit pixelated. So if you're interested, you can, just click on the art itself and it'll open up. So this project was a great opportunity to kind of not only learn many, many new art skills, I got to do so many, learn so many new techniques and master different mediums of art. For example, this is a combination of watercolor as well as Photoshop and digital artwork and editing. And you can go through, these are some of Viola's pieces that she made. So it's kind of all there together, organized by chapter. But you can kind of see how we talked through and discussed all of these scientific concepts of the different neurons in the brain, different regions, and it was just an interesting, it was just so interesting to be able to combine both these very dichotic aspects of my life and kind of directly combine them. So yeah. And, you can go through this website at your leisure, read through your captions. But this is kind of how it's set up. This is another illustration of mine that kind of goes through the physiology and kind of physiological pathway of the circadian rhythm. And, it's just cool kind of being able to illustrate the things that I myself, as a neuroscience student, would see in a textbook, and to be able to have both those perspectives of, as a science student, what type of visual would serve me best in learning, like what would I want to see as a science student, and how, as an artist, I can use that as an advantage to create the most aesthetically pleasing, most clearly understandable but engaging piece of artwork that relays that information across. And oh yeah, we saw this was a that kind of animation that I did that you saw earlier, that Jennifer showed. But I got to learn animation. This is some of Viola's work that she can kind of explain. I'll hand it off to her. But yeah, Viola is my coworker. She's an amazing artist. I've learned so much from her. She's been a pleasure to work with, and I can hand it off to her now if she wants to introduce herself and kind of get into her work.
Oh, thank you. I'm just so happy that Sarrah was there through all of it, I guess, because oh my goodness, it was a very intense couple of months, just like cranking out all this artwork. So I think I'm gonna do introductions. I'm gonna share my screen for the slide. So like Deirdre said that I did already get a degree because I am 24 and still at Lehigh doing an undergraduate. I'm technically a senior. So I actually did graduate in 2018 with environmental science and sustainability with like interest in art, a little minor. I was like very dedicated into going into research and academia. So then I got a job at Princeton where I was basically a teacher's assistant for a lab, one of the undergraduate labs. And then I found out that I loved teaching and I wasn't really into the research part anymore. And I found out more about this career called medical illustration. I talked to a bunch of illustrators and I was like, this is what I want to do. So then I applied as a transfer student into Lehigh, which is where I am now, finishing up a degree in 2 years in graphic design and art. So let me go back to the website that Sarrah started. Oops. Stop share and then screen share the other one. And as Sarrah has said, that you can definitely just look at this more in depth whenever you want on your own time. We did 4 chapters, and then some of the other ones I'll just lead you through are Sleeping and Dreaming, which Sarrah did this incredible animation. Some of these animations we also learned together just took so much longer than we thought it was going to. I think Sarrah said that one of these animations, it was like almost 1,000 individual different artworks to create like a 1.5 to 2-minute video. And it's just insane, like just the amount of time it takes to just create an animation that you see for a few minutes. But it was I think very useful for some of these processes to be able to see them. So this is something that I drew, not animation, but I discovered more of my love for like digital animations and digital illustrations when I did this internship, because before I just never really got into it. But then once you discover how much you can edit and like correct things, because sometimes the first round, you don't really understand what the structure is or where you should put it that's most clear. So I think that's where it helped having this big group of people with their own expertise. You can really get the perfect diagrams out. So we have parenting as like a preview. We could just look through. This is Sarrah's, which is really clear and really helpful for when you're trying to learn the different structures for the textbook. I did one based off an experimentation they did for parenting in mice, which is really interesting. And I felt like every day during this project, we just learned different, like just crazy stories. Like I learned about how mice will just attack their babies if they didn't get pup signaling, which is what that diagram was showing, that if they don't get exposed to a baby mouse, a male mouse will like kill it, which might be a little graphic, but I was just shocked. Like these things you just don't learn about, and it's just really exciting being part of it. And then we also had some time to do some brain art, or like just do more artistic, less educational designs. So Sarrah did, oh, she should probably present her own. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, you can walk through. And
my Wi-Fi is a little slow, so. Ooh. It is definitely slow. It's worse tonight. So I did these little series I call Blooming Brains, which I realized reminds me of blooming onions, but they're basically little mylar sheets, which is like plastic. And then I traced out like sagittal, which is like front to back of a sheep brain, since we got sheep brains delivered to us at our house. Our homes became little labs basically over the summer. And then I just scanned, and this is the one. Oh, don't know why I did that. And then we also did a homage to some of the artists that came and critiqued us, which was great. So I can stop screen share so Sarrah can go through her art and explain it more. Do you want to go through Sarah, I didn't hear what you said, Sarah. Do you want to go through your brain art?
Yeah, I can do that. But I also just wanted to go off of what Viola kind of mentioned just now, with that at the beginning of the project in the summer, we actually got 3 sheep brains mailed to us, and it was just, you know, extremely like, I never thought I would get to, you know, dissect real sheep brains at home, like a literal at-home lab. So it was a very holistic experience, and I'm really thankful to Jennifer for, you know, pulling out all the stops and making sure, you know, that we were able to do so much and have such a thorough understanding of everything we were doing. And the fact that, you know, Viola and I have science background, it was just all the more fun for us because, you know, this is what we knew from beforehand, and getting to dissect and hold and kind of observe the brain for its physical qualities, both from an artistic and scientific perspective, was just really valuable to us. And I think it helped us a lot in making our art. So yeah, I'll just briefly go over kind of these less educational, but kind of more artistic observational renditions of the brain that I did. This one as well. I hope it's showing up, or that it's not slow, my Wi-Fi.
It looks really good. You should tell them how you did it.
Yeah, so this one is mixed media, and it was a very, very therapeutic process actually, because it was really fun just building up layers of watercolor, gouache, acrylic paint, black ink, colored pencil. So many different materials went into just this one drawing. And then on top of that, so this was done on thick watercolor paper. And then I scanned it and kind of upload it to my laptop, and then using Photoshop, edit it to kind of remove the paper from the back and just have it on a white screen, like a white plain background. So just those minute differences, and it's crazy how many different tools, instruments, and media you can use to produce a final product. And it's I'm kind of very grateful that I was able to do this project over the summer in spite of COVID. And we were able to accomplish and create so much in spite of all the barriers. This was another kind of, whoa.
I don't know, it did it to me too.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of my explanation.
Shall we introduce our guest artist? Shall we move to, because
So,
we have very little time left, so what do you think? Deirdre, would you like to introduce Rebecca?
Yes, that would be wonderful. Rebecca Cayman was, you know, on my top of the list of artists that I was hoping might have the time and the interest to join our brain visualization project. And as I said earlier in her introduction, she was just so generous and is such a wealth of knowledge, and is so eager to share her knowledge. And we were just graced by her presence and just the breadth of her work and the sheer talent. So I think Rebecca, you had such a profound effect on all of us. So I'd love to just introduce you, and if you would like to just say a few words, that would be just so wonderful.
Okay, well, thank you. It's such an honor to work with your group. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. You know, having taught college for many, many years and retired from formal college teaching, it was wonderful to be back in the classroom via Zoom, which is a whole new experience for me and I guess for all of us. But one of the things that I want to mention is that Santiago Ramon y Cajal, who is considered the father of modern neuroscience, really came into the world wanting to be an artist. And I was had this extraordinary opportunity to go and work at the Cajal Institute in Madrid and to actually handle his actual drawings. And what's so extraordinary about Cajal is he really always wanted to be an artist, but his father, who was a physician, said, no, you had to be, you know, a scientist like me. And I really believe after examining 7,000 drawings, you understand that his ability to see and record as an artist and his passion to do that first really enabled him to make the discoveries that he did. What's so amazing, he would spend hours looking through the microscope, and then he would, in the afternoon, record from memory what he was observing. So I think he becomes the poster child of the significance of bridging the art and science, because to do science well and to do art really well, you have to be intuitive. And that to me is one of the greatest gifts that of creating a bridge between art and science, is this sense of being intuitive, of being curious, and then just being open to all possibilities. And I really believe that working with Sarrah and Viola, and just, you know, just the dialogues that we have, I can tell that they're on that same trajectory that Cajal was. And I'm very thankful, you know, to you and to Lehigh University for this very generous invitation to participate in this project. It really was great. And what was extraordinary for me is I had just had brain surgery. And it's so humbling. Actually, my hair's grown back now, but it's so humbling for someone who has studied the brain for so many years as an artist to go under the knife for someone, you know, to look into their brain. My only disappointment was I wasn't cognizant enough to be there to observe, but it had a very positive outcome. And sometimes you have to take risks. So congratulations, you know, to the faculty, to the students. You've done a magnificent job, and thank you for allowing me to participate in it.
Well, thank you. And hopefully we'll be able to see your work in the flesh in 2021, because originally, everybody, this was supposed to be a live exhibition on the 6th floor of the Fairchild Martindale Library. And then, of course, that got postponed, and thus we have this virtual exhibition for you. But the hope is that then in 2021, we will be able to show Rebecca Cayman's incredible sculptures, you know, in the library, and that you'll be able to visit and see these. So stay tuned for the 2021 exhibition schedule as soon as the vaccine comes out, right?
Yes. I just want to say one more thing. If anybody is taking this for a 5 by 10, there is an assessment set of questions. And if you want credit for the 5 by 10, you need to go through the exhibit at your leisure and then answer those questions in order to receive the credit you're looking for. And I think now we can open it up to questions. If anyone has a question for any of us, you can put them in the chat box and Stacy can help us answer them.
We do have one question already. And I think it's great for each of you to kind of comment at your stage of career, you know, what advice would you recommend to an artist looking to make connections in the scientific community and to collaborate on these projects? Are there resources out there, or what has been your approach?
Wow, Rebecca, would you like to speak to that one?
Unmute. Actually, what I just do is if I'm reading something and some research, and I find a particular scientist whose work resonates with me, I just send them an email. Mm-hmm. And I've been amazed how curiosity is such an incredible catalyst. Now, granted, when I write to them, I, you know, give them a little bit of my background and everything, and my interest and why I'm reaching out to them. But I think that if you are very sincere and you can sort of figure out what you want and, send an email to a scientist whose research you feel will be helpful in terms of what you're doing, I think you'll be surprised by the response that you'll get.
Yes, I agree. I mean, this working with the brain visualization project, I got really interested in neurons, which I didn't really, ponder. I wasn't curious about neurons before, but with, Jennifer Swann's amazing lectures, which were so compelling and interesting, I just recommend everybody to take her courses. I was really fascinated by the shapes of the neurons. And so it was quarantine, and I'm, walking in the early mornings when nobody else is out with my mask on, and I'm looking at the spring trees that are just starting to bud out with those little tiny green leaf buds. And so you really see the architecture of the trees, and all of these nests were in the trees, gnarled, looking like neurons. And so now my next series of work is all going to be on on bird nests and the architecture, the engineering that goes into these bird brains that are supposedly not that intelligent, but are ridiculously intelligent, and to see how birds create these nests. And I don't know where to look. I've Googled like bird nest architecture, nest engineering, nothing's coming up. So Penn State Abington asked me to participate in a show, and I said, well, this is really what I want to do. I want to make these prints about bird nests, but I need to gather information and meet some scientists that perhaps know about bird nests. Well, they've then linked me at Penn State with a biologist who studies reproductive behavior, so a behavioral biologist. And so he and I are going to collaborate, and he's going to teach me about what the birds make the nest to have babies, right? So but he never ever thought about the architecture of a bird nest. He never thought about why do they make them the shapes that they do, and how do they make them? And he never thought about that. He never thought about like the structure. And I was like, well, of course, this is fascinating. So now we're teaching each other, and this is a new art and science collaboration that just came out of Jennifer Swann's project. So now I'm totally into architecture of bird nests. So Tony Viscardi, I need to know more about bird nest architecture, engineering, all this stuff. I'm so excited, but it never would have happened had it not been for Jennifer. And I just reached out and was like, hey, anybody know a scientist that knows anything about nests? So you're absolutely right, Rebecca. You just have to put it out there in such a way that you're absolutely sincere, and that scientists are incredible about sharing their knowledge.
And science sometimes can be very myopic, or that at least is my observation.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so what I find when I do a lot of lecturing, more probably to scientists than I do to artists, is the fact that they're fascinated because, they're looking down one path, as artists, and this, Deirdre, we look down many paths to come to a conclusion. And I think that's really fascinating to scientists because it enables them to view what they're doing through very different lenses.
Yes.
So I think this relationship between art and science is something that's a win-win for everyone.
I wanted to comment, if I can.
Hi, Tony.
Hey. Incredibly exciting. Two questions. One for my student, Sarrah. I'm so curious about your ability to draw and have this perspective on neurons. And I don't know if many of you know, I have a son who suffered a brain injury. So we're always talking about how the brain regains, how those connections are made, just the way you were saying about the tree. So I'm curious, when you were drawing, Sarrah, how did it help you understand the more complex, you might say, electric circuitry and all the things that go on in the brain that are hard to codify? I mean, did the drawing open up new perspectives on the kind of process of the brain and how it works?
Definitely. It's a very interesting question, because I think having previous knowledge and kind of like a database of the inner workings of the brain from a scientific perspective, for example, in central nervous system and behavior, all these classes that I've taken, having to draw it, having a basic scientific understanding of a concept, such as you mentioned, neuronal circuitry, and then having to draw it, it really tests your knowledge, because I think you could say this for anything, but you could only be a master of something if you can explain it in the simplest form. If you can explain something to a 5-year-old or someone, who's not in the field, like a lay person, if you can't get your point across or that concept across in an effective manner, do you really have the best grasp of that concept? And so it was a really fun challenge for me, because
Yeah, I understand what you're saying in terms of clarity, but when some images went by, it looked like you had some collage-like drawings, but you didn't talk about those, because those collage-like drawings are more representative in my mind in terms of the multiplicity of actions that happen in the brain. So when the brain is visualizing something and then trying, and all the things we know, like Cheryl was saying, in terms of PET scans that we've seen about our son, but that we also observe his activity. And so I'm just so curious about that. The other question I have for Deirdre, because I'm a great lover of animal architecture, and there's a book called Animal Architecture. I'll try to send it to you by I think a German. And then there's a colleague of mine named Johanni Palasma, a Finnish guy, that wrote a lot about it. But I've always been curious about weaver birds and these birds that create nests based on their body and their movement and their intertwining and all those connections that are somewhat like the brain. They happen.
Bowerbirds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very. Hi, Carolyn.
Hi.
She is.
I love bowerbirds.
Well, and it seems like the nest occurs in a process. It's not like they know it takes its form because of the act of its own making. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, well, and that's a perfect segue to introduce Carolyn Lathan Stifle with Bowerbird Lady, who hopefully is going to be our installation artist or sculptor on campus, right?
Yes. Hopefully like at the end of December, beginning of January.
Oh, good.
Install.
So Tony, you're going to love her work. Absolutely. And it's definitely, I mean, your process, can you tell us a little bit about your process?
Sure. It's, my process is very, like you were saying, collage based. I feel like, my work, I'm also very inspired by Cahal, and fascinated by his work. Like Rebecca was mentioning how she went there, which I'm very jealous of. But I do a lot of drawing, and I actually did a project that was kind of stemmed out of my father had an episode of encephalitis that caused some temporary brain damage, and then it affected the language portion of his brain, and he could only say a few words initially, and he couldn't, even though he had been a physician, he couldn't read for a time, and then he had to kind of relearn everything. And he's much better now, but I was very fascinated with the images of his brain initially with the, like basically like a white hole, and then it started to grow back. And so I started looking also at Cahal's drawings and other neuroscientist drawings, and making my own work, my own drawings. And then my work is textile based. So I do a lot of sewing and work with wire and fabric, and I kind of work in parts, and then I put things together and then kind of move stuff around. So some of the work is based on actual brain cells, but then I'll make something that's more like an idea. One of the main elements of this big installation was sort of a fragmentary drawing that, to me, like, it was from something I did long before I started this project, and I just saw it in a sketchbook. But it to me, when I saw it again, it reminded me of sort of like a broken neuron, or just sort of like a burned neuron. And so then I decided that was like, I made a giant version of it, and it was embedded into the piece. And then I had words that he said, like he only would say rice, that was every object, or South Carolina, for every place. And so I had words kind of embedded in there. So when I'm very inspired by science as well, but then I tend to get very much more, it's kind of goes into metaphor quickly for me. But I feel like the whole process of sewing and repairing and grow, that to me is a very important part of the process. So anyway.
Thank you. We'll check out her work in the library, and then hopefully, everybody's work. And then sounds like it'll be sooner than later, right? End of the year.
Hopefully
Okay.
it can come together
All right. We'll keep you
after coronavirus and everything else.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing that.
We're at our time now at 8 o'clock. We had some additional questions in the chat box, and thank you, Carolyn, for joining us.
I love seeing I'm sorry, I love the work I saw. So this work is beautiful. Sorry.
No, I agree. Thank you. We have amazingly talented artists, and we are lucky to have wonderful experts on campus, as well as within the greater community, reaching out to Philadelphia. Thank you to our artists for joining us today. We have lots of opportunities to explore this work online, so please make sure you go on and view the Portraits of the Brain website. We also encourage you to look at the Well, Well, Well exhibition through the Lehigh University Art Galleries. We're super grateful to our sponsors and our support staff who helped make all of this possible, as well as our professors, Deirdre Murphy and Dr. Jennifer Swann. We're so excited for your book to be published, Jennifer, and to see it as well online, as well as a physical copy. Thank you all for joining us. Honestly, I think we could all stay here all night and talk about this. Artists have an amazing way of viewing the world and problem solving. So we hope that this will be the start of many conversations in the future. So we hope that you'll join us and come back often, as well as for these upcoming presentations. So thank you all for joining us this evening. Good luck to all the artists who joined us, who are interested in this field. Please reach out to the artists who presented this evening as a resource. And thank you again for all of you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Well.
Bye.